got limestoners, hawks and panthers, and we got eagles, we got jets, we got wildcats and homeschoolers, and the teens who come to love to put Jesus first. I love my church. We got some senators, we got the Lions, cheerleaders and ballers, and we got hipsters, we got preppies, band geeks and rednecks, and every Wednesday we all get the worship urge. I love my church. I love my church. It's my kind of place. Just walking through the front door puts a big smile on my face. It ain't too far. Jesus says, come as you are. I love this church. I see future nurses, future teachers, engineers and preachers, and we got rocky musicians, lots of seniors. I've even seen awesome small group leaders, and we like to drink our sweet tea from a red Solo cup. I love this church, yes I do. My truck, I like Bridge Street Heat, I like Starbucks, I really like Moe's barbecue wings, but I love my church. It's my kind of place. Just singing praises to the Lord puts a big smile on my face. No cover charge. Jesus says, come as you are. I love this church. I love my church.
Open up your Bibles to the book of Philemon tonight. The book of Philemon. It is right before Philemon. It is right before the book of Hebrews. Right before the book of Hebrews. It's probably going to be like 1 page long. Like one. Why are we strobing right now? Like 1 page long. How many of y'all have ever needed like a serious life change before? Anybody have ever needed a serious? Man, I remember honestly about a year and a half ago. Was when I needed one of my most serious life changes. And honestly, I'll be honest with you, kind of open tonight or whatever. Nobody really knew about it. I really didn't tell many people about it at all. But I just had some stuff going on in my life that I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know what was going on. But I knew that I was like exhausted all the time. Like I could feel myself just really run down and really tired. Even like to the point of about a year and a half ago or so that I was, and I've never felt like this way in my life, like I was almost like on the brink of depression a little bit. It was one of these times in my life that like after I would get done in the office here and I would go home around 5 or 6 o'clock or so, and all I would want to do is just like sometimes even just like turn off my lights, all my lights, and just watch TV and just try to doze off and sleep for the rest of the night. Like I was seriously, I had almost like come to the end of my rope on some stuff. I was just physically, man, I was tired. And at that time, like it was probably like one of the fattest times of my life. You know what I'm saying? I even have like a picture up here just about a year and a half ago that I like to call fat Chip. So there you go, right there. And some of you might like Chip. You don't really look that different. Well, thanks. So I like to just amuse me. Okay, just amuse me that I like to think that maybe I lost a couple of pounds since then. But if you think that I'm still fat, then you're mean. You're just mean. I'm not fat, I'm full, right? I'm full all the time. So anyway, you can take that down, please, anytime. Thank you. So it was a time in my life where I was like, man, something's got to change. Like, this is not the quality of life that I'm used to. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like that I had to kind of fake energy a lot and different things like that. And it just so happened that on this weekend that our church staff went on a retreat together, that we were going through some discussions to where our pastor, Zach Terry, said, hey, let's just be really honest with each other, and let's tell each other some real important things that we can pray for one another about. And so we started going around the circle, and it came around to me, and I said, guys, nobody really knows this, and I'm just going to let you into my personal life and what's going on. And I told him everything. I was like, man, I'm exhausted. I'm always tired. I feel like I'm on the brink of depression. I feel like that I'm having to fake energy, and I don't know why. And I'm too young for this life. And I want to live, and I want to enjoy life, and man, I want to have fun. And so literally, the church staff here gathered around me, like we did with everyone else in that retreat, gathered around me, laid their hands on me, and prayed for me. And from that experience, God used that experience to change my life and to learn. And so I started praying about it and reading about it and asking questions to different people. And I started to learn how to take care of myself better, how to get in the gym and exercise more, how to eat better, how to eat right at the right foods at the right times, how to do things like take a day off. Like that was very foreign to me. How to use all my vacation days. I think like at the end of 2011, I still had all but one of my vacation days left or something like that. So actually how to take time off and just enjoy life. And I'm telling you, man, God has given me like this awesome, incredible life change that I get to live for Jesus more. I have more energy to live for Him. I get to actually enjoy the entire day. Man, it really is like a better life. A better ministry, and just a better me. Like I love life even all the more. Now, everybody thinks through all the time life change. Everyone in this room, just so you know, you are not alone. You are not alone. That everyone in this room is thinking, there are areas of my life that I would like to change. There are areas of my life that need a serious life change. For you, it might be a health change. It might be a relationship change, or a friendship change, or a family change. You might need a change you feel like you need a change in your personality. You feel like that, man, people might just need to cut you a break. Maybe you feel like you need to change your study habits. Maybe you don't like the direction your life is going in. And you're like, man, I think I need to change my future. I think I need to change kind of, where I am headed. Now, let me say this. Our God is all about life change. And God created you, and He made you, and He designed you for an incredible, awesome life of enjoyment. God wants you to have your best life possible. And by the way, your best life possible is life lived for Jesus. Make sure to write that down. Your best life possible is a life lived for Jesus. A lot of people think that Jesus would take away from their life, or that Jesus would hold them back, or they wouldn't be as happy or thrilled or fulfilled or satisfied living for Jesus. But actually, God's desire for you is your best life ever, and your best life ever is Jesus. It is through the gospel. We'll explain all that tonight. I want to go through that with you. But tonight, I want you to think through what change needs to happen in your life. And let me tell you about the number one change. Let me tell you what I know about you. What I know about you, because it's always true for me, and I have these changes that need to be made in my life as well. A spiritual life change. Everyone in this room needs to go through, continue to go through a spiritual life change. A spiritual life change. You know, sometimes we just have worse weeks than others. Sometimes we have worse months than others. Sometimes we have worse years than others. To be honest with you, man, I feel like that this past week has just been kind of like a spiritual low for me. I feel like that I'm not as close to Jesus as I want to be, that I'm not enjoying Him as much as I need to be, that I'm not in the Word and in prayer as much as I need to be. I feel like tonight, man, the reason I'm going to preach this way tonight is because of what I need in my life. And let's be honest, we don't come together to church here because we all got it right. We don't all come to church here because we all got it together. If this is your first night here in CBSM, or if you have only been here a few times or a couple of months or whatever, you got to realize everyone in this room, we might put on pretty faces, but everyone in this room struggles like you do. Even if they've been in church all of their life, we all have issues. We all have problems. We all have needs. We all have this huge need for God to enter in and for God to do huge things in our lives. I want to teach you tonight this story of the book of Philemon. And this book of Philemon, you may have never heard it before. You may never hear it taught on or preached on ever again. But I'm telling you, this is one of the most incredible stories of life change that I have ever read, that I have ever thought about. I mean, this is just amazing what is happening here in this book of Philemon. So make sure, y'all there? Y'all good to go? Y'all in Philemon? Now remember, you can tweet all you want during the service. You know, we love to say that Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, you know, that's kind of like our mission field. That's a place that we can get the gospel out to. There's a lot of people at home right now, not in church, and they're watching Twitter, they're watching the timeline, they're watching, the Facebook, they're watching Instagram, all that. And we get a chance to just pump the gospel into their phone or pump the gospel into their laptop or their computer screen. But make sure, because I've had some leaders from the back say, dude, I've seen, I can see the teenagers on their cell phone and there's a lot of games going on, or there's a lot of texting going on, or there's a lot of other stuff going on. So make sure, don't let the devil use your cell phone to distract you from the message that Jesus wants you to hear. Use social media. Use that stuff. Pump it out, man. That's great. But don't let Satan distract you from the message that Jesus wants you to hear tonight. Now, the book of Philemon. Man, awesome, incredible book. Check this out. So there's this dude by the name of Philemon, right? Philemon is this rich guy. He's this rich dude, man. I mean, Philemon, it looks like he has got a lot of money. It looks like he is a big business owner, and it looks like that he probably even owns a huge house. Philemon probably lives in the city around Colossae, which is why we have that book Colossians, where Paul wrote to that city because he had gone there and planted some churches and different things like that. Philemon had traveled to the town of Ephesus, where Paul was preaching, where Paul was having this huge revival. And Philemon hears Paul preaching about Jesus. Here's about how Jesus is God. Here's about how Jesus loved him, Philemon. Learned about how Jesus lived a perfect life and died a death with our sin in his body and rose from the dead. And Philemon hears about Jesus from Paul, and Philemon's like, man, this is incredible. I mean, I've got to give my life to this Jesus. I've got to give my life to God. This is awesome. So Philemon gets saved. He goes back to where he lives in Colossae, goes back to his house, starts telling people, and he uses his house for a church, to where other people in this town of Colossae start coming over to his house to worship. start coming over to his house for Bible studies and sermons and to meet together with other Christians and to be the body of Christ and to try to reach their city of Colossae together. And so Philemon opens up his house to have this church. Now, within Philemon's business, he has some employees, which were also known those days as either servants, and some people even called them slaves, all right? So we're not exactly sure if that meant that they were mistreated or if Philemon just said, listen, I'll pay you, you work for me, you stay here, let's sign a contract, which would be called a bond servant. So whatever it is, Philemon had a lot of these servants. Now, one of his servants, or slaves, or employees, whatever you want to call them, one of his servants, his name was Onesimus. Everybody say Onesimus with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Onesimus. Look at your friend and get in their face and go like, Onesimus. All right, so make sure they feel the Onesimus. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't say Onesimus without a little trajectile coming out of your mouth. So, all right, reel it back in. Here we go. Onesimus, everybody say Onesimus. Onesimus was one of Philemon's slave servants or employees. Now check it out. Onesimus, it looks like that he runs away from Philemon. He runs away, and he runs away to Rome. And Rome is where Paul's at. And Paul was there. He was actually imprisoned in his house. It was kind of like a house arrest kind of a deal for preaching the gospel. And somehow Onesimus and Paul run into each other, and Paul shares Jesus with Onesimus. And Onesimus, it looks like, as we see here in Scripture, gives his life to Jesus. So check it out, Philemon. Look at verse 10 with me. Verse 10 of Philemon. There's no chapters. It's just all verses. It's one chapter. So Philemon, verse 10. Philemon, verse 10 says this. Paul says, I appeal to you, talking to Philemon. Philemon, I appeal to you for my child Onesimus, whose father I became in my imprisonment. Formerly he was useless to you, but now he is indeed useful to you and to me. So Paul writes Philemon, and Paul's like, dude, Philemon, you will never guess what happened. I've got this dude here by the name of Onesimus. He says that he was your servant. He says that he was living with you. He was working for you out there in Colossae. I just met him in Rome. Somehow we ended up here under house arrest together, or he came and saw me, and I shared the gospel with him. Man, I shared Jesus with him, and Onesimus gave his whole life to Jesus. Now, what you got to understand what's happening is that Onesimus was this runaway. And it looks like that Onesimus just never really had it together until Paul started telling him about Jesus, and Onesimus started experiencing this life change. Now, the thing I want you to write down, the big point of tonight is, I love my church because we love life change. It's actually right there at the top of your paper, but I want you to write that down in your own handwriting. Make sure, just to get that just kind of just singed into your brain. I love my church because we love life change. Now, how cool is our God? Because here's what God does. God takes this runaway slave who it looks like probably stole property from Philemon or stole money. It looks like that he probably took some of Philemon's stuff or some of Philemon's money, and he fled. He ran away to try to go and make it on his own, and he fled to Rome to try to make his own life, and he runs into Paul, and man, it just looks like that Onesimus was probably, man, he was just lost. And he was broken. He's like, dude, I can't do anything right. I try to do things in my own way, but everything just keeps getting messed up. Man, people don't like me. And in fact, you can see here in verse 11 when Paul says this. Paul says, formerly Onesimus was useless to you. But now Onesimus is indeed useful to you and to me. You know what it looks like? It looks like Onesimus was one of those servants, one of those employees, one of those workers, that man, just whatever he did, he never got anything right. He might have been clumsy, he might have been, not so smart, he might have been just that guy that whatever he did, man, he messed it up, and he was just like a, epic fail all the time. And man, Onesimus was just, man, he was struggling. He could have been that worker to where people would just be like, Onesimus, just please, just get out of the way and just let us do it. So it could have been that the other workers were like, Onesimus, we got this, man. Please don't do anything, because you're just going to have to make a mess, and we're just going to have to come up behind you and fix everything. So Onesimus looked like this guy who people began calling him useless. Onesimus was like the butt of the joke. Onesimus was the guy that people were always on him. They never would give him a break. And Onesimus he never quite could get anything right. Man, you ever felt like that? We've all felt like that in some way at some time or another, to where it's like, man, I just keep messing up. I just keep screwing up. Man, my life is just jacked up. And why are people always picking on me? And man, I feel like I can't do right in my dad's eyes. I feel like, man, I can't please my mom enough. I don't feel like that my teachers like me. I feel like that I'm always having to perform for my friends, but they don't just naturally like who I am. And Onesimus is just, man, he's like, forget this life, man. I don't want to be here treated like this. Man, I'm going to show them. And so he takes Philemon's stuff for his money, and he runs out, and he runs to Rome, and he tries to make a life all on his own, because he's like, I'm going to prove myself, man. I'm going to show them that I'm not a mess up. I'm going to show them that I don't just screw everything up, and I'm going to get life right. But somehow, we don't know how, but somehow Onesimus finds himself beside Paul. It might have been that Onesimus heard about Paul. It might have been that Onesimus got into some trouble with the law, and the law took him to sit with Paul for a day. We don't know. But somehow Onesimus and Paul gets together, and Paul shares with him about Jesus. And you know what? Onesimus's life changes. Paul says, as he's writing back to Philemon, Philemon, you won't believe this, man. This dude, Onesimus, he let Jesus come into his life. He let Jesus save him. He let Jesus forgive him. And Philemon, I'm telling you, Onesimus is different. Like, I get it. He used to be useless. But now I'm telling you, he's useful to me. The Apostle Paul, like, I will take him as my own. He can work for me. This dude's life has changed. Everything about him is different. But Philemon, I want to give him back to you, is what he's saying. Now, here's the interesting thing. The interesting thing, when he says in verse 11, when he says that, formerly he was useless to you, but now he is indeed useful to you and to me. You know what Onesimus' name means? Onesimus' name means useful. Now this is crazy. Think about God's plan. Think about God's big plan here and what he's working out. This is nuts. God so plans that Philemon would travel to Ephesus, where Paul is preaching, and Philemon would give his life to Jesus. And that Philemon would go back to his house and start a church in his house, so more people can hear about Jesus. And so his servants and his workers and employees and his family and his friends and all the people in his town, that everybody can hear about Jesus. Well, Onesimus, again, gets everything wrong, messes everything up, and he runs away with some of Philemon's stuff, and he goes to a different town. He goes to Rome, where Paul is, and he just so happens to run into Paul. And so as Paul is telling Onesimus about Jesus, and Onesimus gets saved, we don't know how it comes up, but somehow it comes up that they both know, Paul and Onesimus both know the same dude, Philemon. And Paul's like, wait, I've heard of that guy, Philemon. Philemon was that guy in Ephesus that gave his life to Jesus, that wanted to go home and start a church. So you're telling me, Onesimus, that you work for him? And Onesimus is like, yeah, man, I work for him, but the reason I'm here is I kind of stole some of his stuff, and man, I ran away. And so that's why I'm here. I ran away, and man, so I've got this stuff of Philemon, but now I gave my life to Jesus, and what am I supposed to do? So we see God's big plan that Paul somehow, out of hundreds of miles, that he knows Philemon, that he knows Onesimus, that he finds out that they know each other. But also with God's plan, God's big plan is that Onesimus' name actually means useful. To where Onesimus lived this useless life, all of his life, until he gave his life to Jesus. And that's what we have to know about Jesus. Here's the next thing I want you to write down in your paper. Go and put this up here for me. Only Jesus can totally change your life. Only Jesus can totally change your life. Have you noticed that when you try to take your life by the reins, when you try to take control of your life, when you try to make yourself happy, when you just try to pick your own friends, or you try to pick your own future, you try to pick your own direction, or you try to pick your own life that you want to live, you ever notice how, man, we always mess it up? I always mess my life up when I try to take it under control for myself. But God had a bigger plan. God has a bigger plan for you. God has a bigger plan for me. And the reason we know that is because God had a bigger plan for Onesimus. It's like, Onesimus, dude, just quit trying and just give it over to Jesus, man. Let Jesus do this. And so Onesimus's messed up, jacked up, useless life given to Jesus, his life becomes useful. His life becomes useful. Only Jesus can totally change your life. Some of you in here need to give your life to Jesus, and some of you in here already have, so you need to start living your life to Jesus. Some need to give their life to Jesus. Some need to live their life for Jesus. Jesus is not just looking for believers. Jesus is not just looking for Christians or singers. Man, Jesus is looking for followers. Jesus' desire for you and his big life plan for you to have the best life you can possibly have, is for you to actually give your life to him, for you to actually live your life for him. You know why it's so shocking for us to hear about pro athletes or rock stars or millionaires or people like that, that, man, why do they have to get into drugs? Why do they have to get drunk and high all the time? Why do we hear about suicide and bankruptcy? And why do we always hear that, man, they are in deep depression and that they have to go and see counselors and things like that? Here's what they tell us. Here's what we learn from them. That they've always wanted that lifestyle for all of their life. And then finally they get the lifestyle and they get the popularity. But the popularity becomes annoying because people won't leave them alone. Or they get millions of dollars, and the millions of dollars becomes depressing because their family won't leave them alone for money. Charities keep hounding them, families keep hounding them, people keep using them to them. They don't know who actually likes them for them because everyone just keeps wanting to take advantage of them. That they finally get the car that they want, and a year later, that car is not cool anymore. They've got to get the next car. They finally get the big, huge house that they've always wanted. But now they've been in the house for 5 years, the house is just common to them. It's no big deal. And now there's a bigger house or a better house or some other house that someone lives in that now they want that. That they find out that nothing ever satisfies them. They marry that person of their dreams, but then they find out that, man, marriage can just turn out to be one big argument and one big fight constantly all the time. That's what happens to people who try to take control of their life rather than giving their life to Jesus. We see what happens with Onesimus. He gives his life to Jesus, and Jesus gives him a total life change. And it's amazing what he does. And then check it out real quick. Look at verse 12. Verse 12 of Philemon says, he said, writing to Philemon, he says, I am sending Onesimus back to you. I'm sending my very heart. I would have been glad to keep him with me. in order that he might serve me on your behalf during my imprisonment for the gospel. But I prefer to do nothing without your consent, in order that your goodness might not be by compulsion, but of your own accord. For this perhaps is why he was parted from you for a while, that you might have him back forever, no longer as a bondservant, but more than a bondservant, as a beloved brother, especially to me, but how much more to you, both in the flesh and in the Lord. Here's what we see here. That a real life change brings a love change. Go and put that up there for me. Write this down. A life change brings a love change. What Paul is saying is, not only has Onesimus' life changed, not only has he given his life to Jesus, but once he's given his life to Jesus, he's going to go back to all of his relationships and he's going to make all of them right. We know that we are experiencing a life change when we're experiencing a love change. When we are applying the gospel, when we are letting Jesus enter into all of our relationships and change them all for his glory, and change them all from his word, and change them all for his will. And so Paul's like, dude, I would keep this guy as one of my servants, as one of my workers, as one of my missionaries. I'd send him out for myself if I could, but I know he's one of yours. And so I want to send him back to you, Philemon. And I'm not doing this as your boss. I'm not doing this as your pastor. I'm not doing this and telling you what to do. He says, I don't want you to do this by compulsion, but because of your love for Jesus, I want you to accept Onesimus back, and I want you to love him. And don't accept him any longer as a bondservant, but now accept him as a brother. Now, here's what I have to wonder. Look again, just real quick, at the end of verse 16. And let me just say this, because I don't know if this is true. And I didn't read this anywhere, but this is something that God just revealed to me in this verse that I think might change the game. He says here at the end of verse 16, he says, especially to me, well, let's back up. He says, no longer a bondservant, but more than a bondservant, as a beloved brother, especially to me, but even so much more to you, both in the flesh and in the Lord. You have to wonder, is Onesimus Philemon's brother? Both a brother, he says, in the flesh and in the Lord. Is it possible that Onesimus was like Philemon's little brother? Maybe he was the little brother who, he was that little brother that he was just that pesky, annoying little guy, and he had all of these older brothers. We don't know. But he could have been that guy to where he just never got anything right, and he didn't have a bright future, and just people were always making fun of him, that possibly Philemon said, you know what, man? I know you have a hard life. Why don't you come and live with me, and why don't you come and work for me, and you can be one of my employees, and as your brother, I will take care of you. And then all of the other servants and everyone makes fun of him, and everyone is mistreating him and different things like that. And then Onesimus just can't take it anymore, and so he runs off. And he takes some of his own brother Philemon's stuff, and he runs off, and he gets out of there. You have to wonder if they're brothers. You have to wonder. To where I think one thing that we can see here in this passage that I really, hey guys, focus for me right here, okay? That I really want us to focus on tonight is that the gospel changes the life of your family. Or go ahead and put this up. The gospel changes your family life. The gospel changes your family life. Now, what we see here in this passage is we see this guy who runs away, who steals stuff. He tries to make a life of his own. And that resonates with our heart. This whole story resonates with our heart because it's true of all of us. That God has created us. We've all run away from him in our sin. And we've all taken his stuff because, man, our body belongs to him. Everything he's given us belongs to him. God has blessed us with everything that we have in our life. Man, it's all God's, but we've stolen his stuff so we can go and use it on ourselves and prove ourselves that we're independent and we can make it on our own. But the gospel is that in our running away, that we meet Jesus. And that Jesus changes our lives. And as Paul wrote to Philemon and said, Philemon, I am sending Onesimus back to you, and whatever he owes you, I will pay you back for. Whatever it is that he stole from you, man, I will cover those charges. That is what Jesus did with us. You realize that through Jesus, you don't owe God anything. Jesus has paid your debt. To where God is not your creditor, God is your Father. Jesus is our brother. Jesus is the one. As we have run away, as we have stolen, as we have tried to make a life on our own, Jesus is the one who changes our life, who gives us a life. And as he changes our life, he pushes us back and he says, now go back to your relationships, go back to your families, and change them for me too. So we see the gospel in this passage. We see Jesus as he has taken our sin, that he has died for our sin, that he has risen from the dead. So he gives us a new life. Just last week, I talked with a teenager who came up to me and opened up with this unbelievable story. This unbelievable story. And this teenager said, you know what? Man, I'm just having a really difficult, a really rough time. I feel like that my friends won't give me a break. When I go home, this teenager said, I really don't feel like that my father and my dad and I don't feel like that we have a relationship. I don't feel like that we can really have a conversation. I don't feel like that we can really talk. I feel like that I'm always at odds with my mother. Said, even my sisters. I feel like that even my sisters, that they don't like me very much, and I struggle with, man, it's just like in every relationship area of my life. And this teenager says, what do I do about that? And the only thing that I could share with them is this, is in every relationship, and I want you to think about this for yourself, in every relationship, there's always going to be some wrong on both sides. You can't control what other people do for you in your life. You can only control what you do. And so if you have like family or broken relationships in your life, the way to handle it with your family or the way to handle it with your friends is honestly for you to go up to them and for you to confess and for you to apologize, not pointing out to them what they've done wrong to you, because you don't have any control over that. You can't make them sorry. You can't make them confess. You can't make them ask for forgiveness, but you can do your job. You can do your side of it. And let's be honest, we all have broken relationships. We all have strain, and there's always some struggle that's going on in the family, or if not now, it has before, or there will be, or later on when you're a dad, when you're a mom, when you're a husband, when you're a wife. How can we see the gospel change our family life? Here's how. We own up to our own sin. First of all, man, write this down. First of all, number one, love Jesus. Love Jesus. So if you love Jesus, man, if Jesus has changed your life, if you love Jesus, then you also see how much Jesus loves every person in your family. How much Jesus loves every person in your family. Number two, own your sin. Own your sin. You go up to them, and I encourage this teenager to do this. Go up to them one by one. Don't try to tackle everybody at once, but you go up to each of those family members one by one, and it may be different days that you're waiting for different opportunities, but you go up to them and you say, listen, I just want you to know that I have wronged you, that I have sinned, that I have done things that I should not have done towards you, and I'm sorry for everything that I've done, and I want you to know that I love you, and I'm asking you if you would forgive me. I'm asking you if you would forgive me. You don't have any control. You have to hear this. when you do that, you do not have any control over how they respond to your request. They may not respond well, but you're not ultimately doing it for them. You're ultimately doing it for Jesus. So if they don't respond well and they get angry, you know what? You take it. Jesus has absorbed your sin in his body, so you're able to absorb at times the sin of others that's done towards you. So if they get angry, or if they get mad, or if they just don't, maybe if they don't care, if they're apathetic about it, then you know what? You say, Jesus, I'm doing this for you, and you stay consistent, and you stay faithful. Don't treat them based on the way that they have treated you. Treat them based on the way that Jesus has treated you. Show them the love of Jesus. Show them the grace of God. And so you continue to try to build a relationship with them. You continue to forgive them. You continue to watch your sin and keep your sin away from that relationship. You continue to serve them. You continue to love them. You continue to do things for them. Why? Because you want a relationship with your family. God has given you your dad, your mother, your sisters, your brothers, your stepmom, your stepdad, your stepbrothers, your stepsisters, whoever is in your immediate family. God has given them to you as family. And our family is our first mission field. Here's something that should blow your mind. God can use you to change your family. God doesn't always use the dads. God doesn't always use the moms. God doesn't always use the older siblings or the older brothers or sisters. There are some times that God uses a middle schooler. There are some times that God uses a high schooler. And we've seen it over and over and over again. God has given you your family to be your family for life. So you do your part to make it a godly family. Just like Paul was sending back Onesimus to Philemon to fix that possible family, or at least to fix that relationship. As Jesus changes your life, you go back to your family, and you today understand that today starts the fixing of your family. But you have to keep in your mind, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. This might take weeks. This may take months. It could even take years of faithfulness, of your forgiveness, of your patience, of your grace, of your being very honest with them and continuing to apologize to them for your sin. I've had someone give me this picture before, and it's one of the last things I'll say. I've had someone give me this picture before that if you're standing there and you're holding a gun at somebody, and they're holding a gun at you, the way to get them to drop their gun is not by yelling at them, put your gun down, and it's not by threatening to shoot them. If you want them to lower their gun without anyone getting hurt, the best way is you drop your gun first. And when you drop your gun, they no longer feel threatened to get them to drop their gun. It's the same thing in relationships. If you drop your pride first, if you apologize first and continually and be faithful to that through the gospel, you will start to see your family do the same thing towards you and towards each other. Just look around here tonight. Just look around right now. There's a lot of families. Up top, down below, man, there's probably 150 different families just represented in here. Could you imagine if 150 families were changed for Jesus? That teenager I told you about is in here tonight. And tonight that teenager came up to me and said, you won't believe it, I got to talk to my dad this weekend. And this teenager said, I went in to talk to my dad, and and said, I was so angry, and I was ready to tell my dad just some hurtful things, or that Dad, you've been a horrible father to me. And as Tina said, he came in and sat down and opened his mouth, and what came out of his mouth was, I'm sorry I haven't been the son that I should have been. Dad, I'm sorry that I did these things in middle school, and I'm sorry I did these things when I was younger, and Dad, I'm sorry I haven't lived up to your expectations. I'm sorry that I've been not the son that I should have been, and Dad, I want to know if you can forgive me. And the senior said that his dad looked him in the eye and said, son, I love you. And the senior said that was the first time in a long time that he really felt like his dad meant it. That's what Jesus does. Jesus changes our life first, and then goes and changes our relationships, and then goes and changes our families. Don't wait for your parents. Don't wait for your brothers or sisters. Don't wait for your family to make the first step. You make the first step of Jesus being worshipped, Jesus being loved in your family, and realize it could take a while, but it's worth it. You're going to have to be patient, but it's worth it. You're going to have to forgive them a lot, but it's worth it. It's going to hurt as you love them, and they may not love you in return as you